Hey everybody, this is CJ from Bibles on a Budget, and today we are taking a look at the Holy Bible, Berean Study Bible. So this is a newish translation from the folks at Bible Hub, and they teamed up with a group of translators to make a new, I guess you could say, series, in a sense, of Bible translations. We're going to talk about that in a second. But before we do, let's take a look at the outside of the Bible itself. So the Bible is really cool. It is a fake leather, so this is what they call their soft cover, and it features perimeter stitching here along the front, back, and sides. And what I love about this is I just love the front. For some reason, I love the front. The front is just super simple. Holy Bible, Berean Study Bible. Love that. And it's blind stamping, so the darkness of the brown in the blind stamping really contrasts with kind of like the reddish brown, light brown of the cover. So let's look at the side. Let's look at the spine here. Spine is super simple. Blind stamped in it is BSB. There is no spine hubs or anything like that. And then on the back, oops, there's some dirt. Whoops. Just from my table. But again, super simple. There's no stamped in ISBN number down here like some Bible manufacturers do sometimes. And again, here's the perimeter stitching. Now, this is a no-nonsense Bible. This is a Bible that doesn't try to be fancy or anything. So what you're going to see here is just white page edges. They are rounded, which is nice. And then you got this little yellow ribbon. As you can see, mine is already starting to fray. But I have been reading down this Bible pretty extensively. So yeah, so if you're somebody who likes to replace ribbons and are able to, I would recommend doing so. And then you got yellow tail and headbands. So that's pretty awesome. All right, enough of the outside. Let us get into the inside of the Bible. So inside you're met with this super nice kind of marbly cream paper paste down. So this is, if I remember correctly, and I'll put the price here on the screen in a second. This is a $40 Bible. So most of the time $40 Bibles aren't really, fancy or anything. So paper paste down, and then you got the end sheet here. It's not edge lined. Again, $40. This is Bibles on a budget. We're not fancy. We're not, as I will sometimes tell my friends, we're not bougie. If you know what that word means, good for you. If you don't, then, well, yeah. Anyway, so here's the start of the page. Super simple. Again, kind of the same as the front. Holy Bible, Berean Study Bible. This Bible actually is going to be getting a new name soon. It's going to be called the Berean Standard, just because the word study just sounds a little confusing to some people, and standard makes more sense. This is not a study Bible in the traditional sense. There is some footnotes and such, but it's not like something that you have like translator note, a lot of translator notes, or a lot of study notes from commentaries and stuff. You won't find that here. So here's the publisher page, and then over here you got the table of contents. You got Genesis to Malachi and Matthew to Revelation. Now I want to look at this real quick over here because this is super awesome. So typically when you have a Bible and they have a copyright page, it'll tell you how much of the Bible you can use before you kind of bump up against their copyright. With the BSB, on the other hand, you actually have a lot of freedom with it, which is really cool. So it says here the BSB text may be quoted in any form, written, visual, audio, or electronic, up to 2,000 times, up to 2,000 verses without written permission of the publisher, which is the publisher is Bible Hub. Also, without requirement of written permission, you are free to make up to 200 copies of any portion of this text or the full text itself for personal use or free distribution in a church, ministry, or missions settings. And then down here, there are examples of other Bibles that they're wanting to make. And for those of you who love Bibles printed in the United States, printed in the USA. And might I say, this is a fantastic United States printed Bible. All right, enough of that. We're going to go into the next part here, which is just the preface. They get their inspiration for the name of this Bible from Acts 17:11, which talks about the Bereans. Here you get a little information, so if you want to just pause that real quick and read that yourself if you're interested. But one thing that's really cool about this Bible is that they desire to share it as freely as possible, and they wanted it to be, like it says here, as free as possible from licensing and publishing constraints. So they needed a copyright, it says here. While copyright is necessary to ensure that there are not multiple forms of the same version, the project is constructed to enable royalty-free publishing of digital resources and generous licensing for use in printing. Now, down here, you'll see multiple different websites. That is because this Bible is actually going to come out. The Berean is going to be coming out in multiple different versions. So this is called their Study Bible. So the Study Bible is kind of their CSB, NIV, very readable, but not super, free with the translations, not like a paraphrase. The other thing you're going to get is an interlinear Bible, a literal Bible, which will be more word for word. Looks like they're doing a reader's Bible, an emphasized Bible, and an annotated Bible. And then you also have audio Bible, which is super awesome. Love audio Bibles. All right, so the next page here talks about the tiered translation structure. So that was a reference to some of those Bibles I mentioned. So you have the interlinear, which is just, you have the Greek or Hebrew on one side, and then you have the English on the other, or however they're going to do it. But you have the English and the Greek, or the English and the Hebrew next to each other, so you can kind of compare and look at that. Then you have a literal translation, which is supposed to be a word for word, something akin to the King James, New King James, NASB, ESV, and so on. Then you also have a modern English translation, which they say is effective for public reading, memorization, and evangelism. This is more like an NIV or a CSB. And then an emphasized translation, this is going to be more like an NLT or something like that. So something a little bit, as you can say, more dynamic. And then over here you see, you'll see these a lot in the footnotes. So these are where they're drawing their sources from, or this is where they say like this group of Greek texts or Hebrew texts renders this way. And I'll show you that in a second. But you have the abbreviations, and you can kind of see what they're from, so you know what they're saying. So if you see NA, you know they're talking about Nessie Alon. If you see the TR, it's either Scribner's or Stephanus's Textus Receptus. DSS is the Dead Sea Scrolls, and then you got the different Masoretic texts and the Septuagint, and so on. All right. So without further ado, let us get into the Bible itself, starting with Genesis. So as you see, I just turned that page and we're right into the Bible. Some Bibles have like an intro page that says Old Testament or New Testament, but not the Berean. They're like, let's just hop into the Bible. Let's just not use an extra piece of paper, just say, hey, here's the Old Testament. They're like, no, here's Genesis. All right, so let's talk about the format of the Bible real quick. So the format of the Bible is double column, as you can see here, and you have the different titles for the sections here, and then here in the Genesis narrative, you do have the parts that are broken up by their days, so first day, second day, third day, fourth day, and so on. You'll also notice that you have these giant bold numbers for the beginning of chapters, and then these smaller little bold numbers for verses. This is a paragraph format, and it is also not line matched. There are moments when it seems it's line matched, and then there are moments when it's not. It just happens to be how the formatting is. Down here at the bottom of the Bible, you'll see that there are some translator notes, and it also gives you an instance of when something was cited. So you'll see right there, A3. You'll see, if I can find one, so like for instance, 3. You'll notice that there's little letters. It's kind of hard to see there, but there's a little letter right there. And you come down here and it says like A3. Oh, this says it's cited in 2 Corinthians 4:6, and so on and so forth. And you kind of see, for instance, in verse 6, it talks about the expanse, which also could be translated as a canopy or a firmament or a vault. And it's also mentioned in verse 7 and 8. So it's really cool. This is just kind of some basic stuff that you have. So it's nice to have this little stuff because sometimes you may be reading through something like Kings or Samuel, and you may come across somebody's name, and you'll see that somebody's name, the name they chose to put in the text, also has a variant. So you can kind of be like, oh, cool, that's really cool. I apologize for the shaking. The way that I have my camera set up over the stand is on the table, so if I thud it a little bit, it will shake a little bit. All right, let me talk about what I was talking about earlier, and it's not line match. So therefore, the ghosting on this is a little harsh, but it's not super bad. And let me explain why. This paper here is actually, if I remember correctly, 45 GSM. I'll put the number right here so you can see what that says. This is 45 GSM. That means that this is very thick paper. It's like you can feel it. I'm not the person that could feel paper and say like, oh yeah, that's really thick. But it's really nice. And so therefore, the way that this paper is treated and such, it's very opaque. So my camera, because of the light, you can see a lot of the ghosting here. But really, when I read through this, it's not really that bad. It's really nice. All right, so what you're seeing here is prose. So let's hop over to something like Psalms. Let me see if I can find it real quick. And let's look at some poetry. So you can kind of get an idea. This is Nehemiah. Let's see, here's Job. So Job, that has some poetry in it. So here you can see that everything is verse by verse. So in prose, it is paragraph format. But in poetry, like here in Job, and in Psalms, and in Proverbs, it is verse by verse. Let me show you that real quick. So here's Psalms. So you have verse by verse. So each verse is its own paragraph, if you will. The setup here in Psalms is that you do have the name of the psalm, so Psalm 89, then you have the title, and then it just goes through. It does have the Selahs in this translation, and again, down here it does have some translator notes, kind of giving you an idea. Like, you may see this term in one of the Psalms, maskil, so it says it is a maskil of Ethan the Ezrahite. So it'll give you kind of like an idea of what a maskil is, so that's pretty cool. All right, so let's go to the New Testament, so I can show you that. So here's the New Testament, and remember the New Testament is primarily prose, but let me show you that this is not a red letter Bible. As you can see, this is Matthew chapter 5. The majority of Matthew 5, 6, and 7 are red letter and other red letter editions. This is not a red letter. I forgot to show you that underneath some of these like little like place headings or something, pericopes, I guess you could say, you do have references. So here, for instance, with the Beatitudes, you have Psalms 1 through 6, and Luke 6, 20 to 23. So you have like where these Beatitudes are referenced, and then come down here also with salt and light. You do have Mark 4, 9 through 50, and so on and so forth. So there's that. Again, love this. I forgot to mention that the text itself is, I believe it is a 10.5. So it's really big. It's really readable. Really readable for me. I don't know how with certain people who have certain visual impairments and needs. I don't know if this is going to be big for you. But compared to an 8 or even a 7.5, this thing's massive and it's awesome. All right, so let's go to the back of the Bible. We're going to skip past Revelation, which in this Bible is just called Revelation. It's not called the Revelation of John or the Revelation of Jesus. It's just called Revelation. So here's Revelation. A lot of this stuff also, again, should be in red because Jesus is speaking. So let's go to the back here. Is there anything special in the back? The only thing that is here in the back is a table of weights and measures. So you've seen this a lot. What I like about this is that the table of weights and measures, from what I see here, all this is in the same font size as the Bible text. So it's super readable. I don't personally use tables of weights and measures all that much. What tends to happen is over here with these footnotes, is that sometimes they will translate them, or they will say this is what it is. So for instance, I was reading in 2 Kings today, and it talked about how there were going to be a seah of, I think it was flour, a seah of flour that was sold for a shekel. So down here, it was telling me what a seah is, but you could also come back here and be like, okay, I want to know what in the world is a seah. So a seah, it says here, is 1/3 of an ephah. And you're like, okay, what does that mean? Well, it's 6.7 dry quarts, or 7.3 liters. And then you have a reference to where you can find it. So you can find it in Genesis. You also can find it in 2 Kings as well. And then again, back, nothing, in sheets, and yeah. All right, so final verdict. What do I think about this Bible? I really, really enjoy reading out of this Bible. One, because it's massive, and two, this thing is super floppy, and it's so interesting to have like a really floppy cover that's not real leather, because sometimes real leather is really soft and kind of floppy, but this isn't. This isn't real leather. This is floppy, I should say. It is floppy, but it's not real leather, so it's really nice. So I would recommend this to people who are, one, fans of the Berean Study Bible, and you know they need a big Bible. They like the floppiness, they like the fake leather. So I would recommend that. Super simple. I would also say that if you're somebody who's looking for a big text Bible and are interested in trying out different versions, you're kind of like, well, there's a bunch of other English versions, I'm curious about them. You want to try this one out. This one's really cool because what I found is when I read through it and I compare it maybe to something like a New King James or such, a lot of those renderings in here are actually very similar. So they don't really take too many liberties or new translation possibilities. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So sometimes if the translation works, it works. And if it's the same as what's in the New King James or in the CSB or maybe even the ESV or something, they don't fix it. They don't change it. It's good. It's solid. This is more like a CSB or an NIV, but it also is very, I would say, very literal. So it's also very much like the New King James. So if you're a fan of that and you want to check this out, I will leave a link to the store below so you can check that out. Also, I'll leave a link to the website itself so you can get more information. If you're not satisfied with what you read in here, you want to find out more from the horse's mouth, from the website, you can do that. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching this episode of Bibles on a Budget. And remember, the truth does not have to be expensive. See you folks in the next one.